So I was out in the backyard last night. I was watering one of the plants with the hose, the garden hose, and I was kind of wandering around, and I saw a flash in at the side of the garden, and I went and had a look, and it was a firefly. And I remember as a kid, when I was camping in this area as a young boy, I used to see them all over. They were like clouds of them, and I remember catching one in a jar and looking at it and seeing what it looked like during the daylight, and when it wasn't blinking, and they look kind of drab, kind of plain looking when they're not flashing. Kind of like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, like they work in the hardware store during the week, but on Saturday night, and this is just like these fireflies, they look pretty low key during the day, but at night they party. This is a show about jewelry, why we wear it, why it matters, how it's made, and what it means. I'm Alex D, and I turn cannabis into gold. I make mind-blowing jewelry in gold, silver, and platinum from cannabis plants here in Canada for stage, screen, for people who want to rock crazy jewelry. I'm the Cannabis Goldsmith. I was going to write a column in the local arts magazine about fireflies, actually, how I used to see them as a kid and in this area. And now, 50 years later or whatever, you don't see them very much. And anyway, I was just thinking that last night when I was standing out in the garden, and suddenly I could see them all over. They were everywhere. There was a whole cloud of them in the weed plant, kind of just like flashing every so often. I think they can control the flashes, so if they want to be low key, then they don't flash, right? So, but anyway, I stood there motionless, and all of a sudden they started appearing all around me, and it was just like when I was a kid, seeing all this magic. Like when I was a kid, there were no LED lighting hadn't been invented. So to see a bright, tiny point of light like this was unusual. It was like really unusual. I remember being really fascinated at how like this could suddenly appear in darkness, right? Just like an incredible. Just like magic almost, really. But now you can do it with like little LED string lights. But back then you couldn't, and so that's why it was interesting. Now I was thinking last night as I saw these flashing all around me. I was thinking, this light is an interesting color. It's really almost blue white. It's almost LED white color, like. Daylight, like 6,500 Kelvin, something like that. Really, really kind of blue, kind of like blue white light. I was thinking as I was looking at all these things flashing around me, and I was thinking, last year when I had the cataracts in my eyes, that the color would have appeared slightly yellow. And maybe I wouldn't have even seen some of them because they weren't bright enough for me to detect with my eyes, say if they were further away, for example, in the distance. But here I was standing amongst them and looking at the color of the light they were producing, and it seemed very blue to me. It seemed very like white, more leaning towards the blue spectrum. So afterwards, when they'd fucked off to wherever they were going to mate or whatever down the bushes, I went in and looked up fireflies and found out that no, it's not blue. What the color they're producing here is a kind of a green color, but it appears blue because the way the human eye perceives color against dark backgrounds or whatever. It's so complicated. The human eye's ability to see color is it's all relative. It's all like, it depends what's behind the color. It depends how dark the room or the area is that you're seeing the color in. It depends whether the color is reflected or being projected at you. All these different things can impact the way we see color, which is amazing, really. I think it's just fascinating. And a lot of times, that's not the only part that's fascinating. The thing is, the way we see color can be modified by our brain, and our brain does a lot of the modification to what's coming into our eyes. So it fills in the blanks, or it's like the AI that makes the image better for us to see, our brains to see, right? It's our AI. It sorts out the image. Maybe it'll adjust the color a little bit, and before we even see it. So we get a crisper, clearer picture, as good as our eyes can do. Now, if you have defects like I had, like big, thick cataracts blocking light going into the eye or changing the color of it, it impacts everything. But the brain, even though that's the case, and was the case with me, my brain was working overtime in order to correct that, because it knew that the trees were supposed to be more green. The leaves were supposed to be more green than I was seeing them. So it corrected it, added that. It shifted that algorithm a little bit in my brain to improve the perception of the green, in spite of these filters over my eyes blocking the light coming in. It's like if you put on a pair of sunglasses and you're looking around at color, the color sort of changes right away. Immediately you notice there's a pink tint over, or a gray tint over everything, but your brain adapts to it, and suddenly it takes that into account, so you can tell the greens and reds apart most of the time, wearing like tinted glasses. But sometimes other colors change with tinted glasses, so that's harder to do. But your brain can most times deal with that and adjust the color based on the shape. Like if you throw a banana into the on a lawn, on a green lawn, a banana on a green lawn. Now you're seeing that, aren't you, in your mind? Well, the banana on the green lawn, if you put a pair of sunglasses on your eyes, that's going to change for a second, but then your brain will pull it back to the banana on the green lawn, and you won't really notice that the sunglasses are impacting the color perception of your eyes. So that's what I'm saying. Color is really complicated. I was listening to this podcast last night, these two English painters, the Art Juice podcast I listened to. And one of them was getting really almost angry. I could detect it in her voice, how she had bought a tin of paint, and it was supposed to be green, some kind of green, but it wasn't. It was a different green. Like, she was almost angry about it, right? And I was thinking, okay, that's the idea that, first off, it's a label on a can or on a tube, and how it got there is what you should be thinking about. Like I was thinking, look, the guy who made the paint color, or the woman who made the paint color in the factory, what kind of light was he or she looking at the paint on as he was mixing it? They were mixing it. They had special, no doubt, special. If it was a reputable place, they would have special light that matched daylight, so that they could see what the colors of the paint were they were mixing. But perhaps the guy had cataracts, so he was like overcompensating or something with a tint in it. But then the whole other thing, it's all relative. Like moss green for me is different than moss green for you, right? Just the text of that, if you write that on a page, now without any color whatsoever, just write moss green on a page. Now your mind is going to produce a different idea of what that color is, compared to me, right? And a lot of this depends on all the moss we've seen in our whole life. So all this is like, there's so many things about color that are just so like almost magical and just weird. Like just, they're thinking these there's just so many pieces going into how we perceive color. and each one relates to the other. So it's amazing humans can communicate a color. One color can communicate about colors to each other because we see them all differently. But in a way, we must see them in the same way too, in order to call oranges oranges, right? Maybe somebody's seeing an orange as blue. Like, I wouldn't know. They might. But maybe their brain is adapted to make it orange or whatever. It's just weird. Anyway, this painter was getting all like almost angry about how this one tin of paint or whatever is not the color that she thought it would be. Well, change it. That's what I got to say. The idea about color. I'm thinking so much about color now. I'm buying all these things to digitize this photography collection, where color is critical, right? Color is critical in that whole process of digitizing film. Like you want to stay true to what the original was, and you want to make sure that the color in the digital file is the same as what's on the original negative. So I've been thinking a lot about color preservation and color, maintaining a color throughout a whole process, maintaining, like, say, one color, white, across the across a whole digitization process. Or there's more than color too we have to consider here, but I'm just talking about color today. But if you go to a paint store, for example, in your hardware store or at wherever you buy paint, go to a paint store. There'll be a wall of little paint swatches, chips or whatever they call them, little pieces of cardboard with different paints painted on them. And they're usually in a rack. Now, this rack is lit with a special light that the paint manufacturer supplies, I think. Or they must describe it to the paint store. We want this temperature of light above the paint chips, the paint swatches, so that they will look as they are supposed to look. Now, what happens if you throw another bulb in there? What happens if you don't use their bulb and you use some other bulb? All the colors change on that wall, all of them, right? So somebody coming in to the hardware store, what if that bulb isn't there at all and you're just getting the lights from the hardware store ceiling, whatever they may be that day? Whoever installed them and whoever replaced bulbs, there's no consistency across the fluorescent tubes across the ceiling. And what if you're looking at that wall of paint swatches under that kind of lighting? What's it going to look like? Okay, now say you pick a color and you pick a color of paint and you get them to mix it for you, and you go home and you're looking at your wall and you start applying it to your wall and you go, what the fuck? Like, that's not the right color. Like, okay. Everything is like this, the environment changed. So the color is the same, but the environment changed. So the color looks different. Color's environmental, right? You can see light changing outside, like a cloudy day, softer light. A sunny, bright day, harsh shadows and like contrast, right? And edge detail and stuff. It depends. Color depends. I've struggled with this as a jewelry designer trying to photograph metals. Like I thought, I'm a good photographer, or I've had decades of experience as a photographer with different types of formats. I started off as a black and white, using black and white film because that's all I could afford, and as a teen or whatever in the 70s, and migrated to what I do today, which is digital. I shoot digital photographs. But moving across that whole spectrum, I've had some experience with photography. So when it came to the jewelry photography for the jewelry design, it's incredibly complicated, as I mentioned before, to photograph metal so that it looks the way it is in real life. Now, I strove from the beginning to make sure the color of the metal was accurate, the color of all the photographs I take to promote the tribe jewelry designs is as accurate as I can make it. And, I was doing it numerically with like the software. After a while you have enough experience where you can look at a curve of the image in software and adjust it with even if your color perception is off, because you have the experience to know what certain things should look like in the file, right? But I mean, with good color perception and a good monitor and a good photograph, you can adjust colors to the way there ought to be. Well, that's another thing, right? It's so complicated. What do they ought to be like? Well, in the case of me as a photographer, I take an image, say, of a ring, let's just look at the belt buckles we'll be photographing soon, these sterling silver belt buckles. I want the sterling silver to look great. I want it to look like sterling silver. I want the background to be minimized, but I want the metal to look like sterling silver. Now, what does sterling silver look like? It's shiny, it's reflective. Now, how do you capture that? How do you capture that exactly? So that when I upload the photo to Instagram or to our webpage, that it's just as I shot it. There's nothing. The colors as it's supposed to be by the photographer who shot the image. Now, that's what I'm talking about. Now, so many things can go wrong here. If you have a monitor and you're adjusting the photograph to what you see on the monitor, and the monitor isn't producing accurate color for your photograph, you're adding problems to the file. You're adding problems to the image. And then when you upload it to Instagram, it looks weird. And I've done this before, based on the monitor I've used, that it hasn't just been right, it hasn't been accurate, so that when I've uploaded something, it looked weird. But then we also have to deal with other things too. When we upload photos to platforms, to walled garden platforms like Instagram or any of these social media platforms, TikTok or whatever, when we upload photos to them, their algorithms are they are adjusting the photos as well. So that's kind of changing them again. Either they're reducing the quality, they're sharpening them, or they're doing something to them. It's out of your hands once you upload the photos to them. So they start changing them a little bit. And so as a photographer, this becomes, you just set it free and out it goes. And hopefully people will get the idea of what you're trying to mean with the image. The whole idea is really trying to communicate an idea with an image. That's the way I think about it. If I photograph a belt buckle or a ring, I want people to see what it looks like. I want it to have some drama too. I don't want it to just be like a product shot against white. I don't want that. Everyone does that. It's stupid. It's the same. I want something. I go the opposite, like shoot it against black. Okay. Instagram, when I started putting up the black background stuff, every jeweler in the world was shooting jewelry against white backgrounds. And this is why I went the other way, right? It's like, fuck that. I want to do something different. I want to do something creative. But when you start fiddling around with images and your message, the image you're using to, well, that was a big fat Harley. When you start adjusting the image, the color and stuff to create that vibe with your image, it's important to be able to prepare it so that somebody down the road on Instagram or whatever will get the effect that you want. So often what I'll do is I'll adjust my color of the image on desktops and then desktop computer, and then test what it looks like on a phone after I've done that. I don't do any color correction or any kind of adjustments on phones. I remember, it must be about 7 years ago now, something like that. I was walking down, I was in Toronto, and there's this place called the Big Carrot. It's like a vegan store. I mean, a store that sells kind of supplies for the vegetarian community in Toronto. It's like one of the oldest places of that. It's like in a little kind of courtyard. It's called the Big Carrot. And there's other little stores around. And there was this one store that used to be like a card store or something. It had been empty for a long time. It had been vacant for years in this complex, in this small little complex. And then one day I walked by and I saw all these abstract paintings in the window, and they were bright and they were colorful. They were like small paintings, like, 18 inches tall, wide or whatever, square. And they all had similar kind of designs, but different colors. It was all color, like really like bright, nice color too. Not harsh, but really nicely put together. And there was a woman sitting in the little shop there, and she was the artist, and she was selling her paintings for. I guess she had rented the shop out for a couple of months or whatever, just to use the empty space to show her paintings. And it was actually a good place to do that, because the people walking back and forth to the Big Carrot would be passing by her exhibit store, right? But it was color, and the color was intense and nice. It was really nice. So I went in and talked to her about it, and talked to her about her paintings, and I met her, and we had a coffee some weeks later to talk more about color and painting and shit like that. And I was asking her about color. I was trying to learn about color. Even then, I had really, as artists see color, and I asked her, like, are there books? She went to an art school. Like, I mean, what a luxury. I had to go to like an art school. She went to an art school in BC, and she graduated from some fine arts program or whatever. So I thought, this is perfect. I'm going to ask her about color. What did they teach you about color in school? And she recommended a couple of books to me, but these old kind of paperbacks about color. And I looked at them and how, I guess one was about how color's mixed, and the other is how color's perceived. I've forgotten what they are now. They didn't really teach me that much as a photographer. But anyway, I still, absorbed the data from them. Seeing how artists, like other kinds of artists, utilize color, that was interesting for me. Now, I've got new gear coming, as I said. I'm doing this digitization. And I've got a monitor coming that is supposed to be really quite accurate. So the color will improve. Hopefully better color than I've ever done. When I begin digitizing all these photos or adjusting color on other images or whatever, I'll get nice, accurate color. But once that's done and locked down, once I release it to the world, a picture of like the rave scene or whatever in 1994, or a picture of a ring or whatever with or a belt buckle, once that's got released out into the world, it's up to the person who sees it to decide what the color of it is and how it appears. So it's a bit of a chance as a product photographer. There's so many things that can go wrong between the time you take your photo and you release it to the world, and color is one of them. Now, these days, we're all getting too accustomed to AI, adjusted photography. I mean, really, even me, I don't like it. But, for example, I went out, I have a little herb garden here, and I planted some borage. I have no idea what borage is, right? But I got borage, plant, seedling, put it in the ground. The fucking thing is huge, right? It's quite a large plant with big floppy leaves. And an interesting flower. The color of the flower is kind of like a blue, purple color. A really interesting flower color in the blue spectrum. And I'm thinking, wow, let me photograph this. So I whip out the phone just to take a something to, to remind me of what the color is. And I just bend over and just quickly take a picture of it. And the image the phone produced was this crystal clear, sharp close-up of the flower of this borage plant. And I didn't take that. I just bent down for a second and took a quick photo. I didn't even really look. And yet it came out, every hair on the stem of this close-up is in crisp, perfect focus. And I remember immediately thinking, I didn't take this photo. This wasn't me. What had happened was that the phone took the photo, modified it so that all the little hairs on the stems were crystal clear, sharp. God knows what else it did. The color is slightly different on the phone than it is now on the flower, so it's adjusted the color somewhat. The whole photo it's not mine. It's not. I wanted a blurry snapshot just to get the color of that flower captured right, because I like that color. I've never seen it before. I wanted to capture it. Maybe look at how to make up that color. What RGB components make it up. Like, you just use an eyedropper and you can on a software program, and you can determine this, right? So I can replicate the color in different ways, and like for text, fonts, or whatever, right? So just a bit of learning about color in nature. But the phone didn't capture it exactly. The phone did all this stuff, and it did it so quickly. And listen, I don't have an iPhone. I have a cheapy Android phone, and nothing special. This thing took this photograph, sharpened it, balanced it, put it all in focus, blurred the background perfectly. Like the bokeh in this is really good. Bokeh is that blurry dot shit in the background of photographs. If you use the word bokeh as a photographer, don't. Anyway, the background is nicely blurred, and the photos, the flower, the borage flower is standing out from the background. Like, I did none of that. I didn't even have an intention to do it, and suddenly there it is, right? Now, granted, most people who aren't photographers would love this. They'd say, "Fuck, I'm great, aren't I? Like, I take great pictures of flowers. Maybe I could make a career out of it." But no, it's the phone, it's the AI in the phone doing this. So now, with this digitization project I'm going to be doing over the winter, and I'm thinking, I was wondering how to remove grain in photographs, and there's AI tools for this, and I'm thinking, oh no, I have to really think about that, because what else is that doing to the photograph? If I use an AI tool to remove film grain from a digitization of, say, a photographic slide, and it's grainy, I can use an AI tool to remove grain, but it might impact the color of the image. So that's thinking that I have to do with that, and also with a photography of the jewelry products, like AI. I'm not happy with it yet, Listen to me saying yet. I know it's here, it's coming. Everything, all the photos online you see, everything. Especially with jewelry, as I mentioned before, even the big gorilla brands like Cartier or whatever, they're all using AI generated imagery and shit to sell their products. Like, but I guess they're selling an idea. So, no, man. This podcast has just been me ruminating about color. Suffice it to say that when I take a photo, I want that photograph to be an accurate representation of what I'm shooting. If it's one of our sterling silver indica leaf belt buckles, I want it to look just the way it looks. on a belt with jeans. I'll take some dust off it, but I won't do anything else to that image. It looks the way it looks, right? That's the way I want it to look when I promote our jewelry products. I want them to look the way they are, so that when somebody is looking at them, they can visualize how it will look on their belt or around their neck, on a pendant, on a chain, or, they can visualize this, And it becomes almost impossible to do if everybody's jewelry starts looking the same online like it does now. It all looks the same because it's all being AI manipulated and generated and shaped and colored and all that. And in the end, you're all getting this homogenized product photography right across the jewelry manufacturer spectrum, from low end to extremely high end. And those people should know better, the extremely high end people. They need to take as much time with the photography as they do with counting their money, I think. Anyway, I've just rambled about photography. So the perception of color is individual. The best we can do for somebody like me who wants to capture an accurate representation of the products that I make, the best we can do is stay true to the color of it and the shape of it and of the image. And then once we release it out into the world, to Instagram, and they start fucking with it, who knows what it will become. But we must give them something to start with. We must give the customer something to start with. Now, if the customer is looking at the photo you've spent like a week producing to make sure it's perfect, if they're looking at it on a monitor with a green cast, they're in their bedroom or whatever, and their own monitor has like a blue cast, it's going to change everything. So, there's only so much you can do to get a good image and a good representation of what you're trying to produce. So the other way around it is to do the best you can, but flesh out the photograph with a good story, because people understand story and they can create their own color and their own visualizations around the product if you build a good story around it. Maybe I should talk about storytelling next week, and product sales or product marketing online with storytelling. But anyway, that's been my story today. A total random color rant. Do the best you can with color. Check it, double check it, and then send it out there into the world and hope for the best. That's it for me this week. I am waiting for computer components to arrive. Still, little bits are coming in at a time, slowly building the digitization system, and for the winter when I'll be doing that. And I'm still working on the large indica leaf belt buckle. We're going to put the hallmarks on it probably later today, and then I'll put a gentle curve on it, and then we'll start photographing it. And the photographs of this are going to be accurate. If you've listened this far in the podcast, when you see it in the photographs, it'll be the way it is. So that's it. Anyway, it's full-on summer. Today we're supposed to get the remnants of the big hurricane Beryl that hit Texas. So that's hitting me today. So we'll see what that's all about. The Cannabis Goldsmith is produced by Tribe Communications, Inc. in the Thousand Islands area of Ontario, Canada. You can see what we do at tribe.ca. Send us an email, alexd@cannabisgoldsmith.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Cannabis Goldsmith. I almost forgot. Happy 7/10, everyone.